What is up, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for clicking on today's video. Before we get into the topic, I have to talk about this on my face. It's still no shave November. I have not shaved all of November, and this is what we have going on still. So, to say the least, it's not been the best success, but you know, I'm gonna stick it out until the very end of November. So speaking of November, that brings on probably the most asked question that I get around this time of year is, what should I do, or how should I approach my diet with the holidays coming up? Now, this is a topic that I have absolutely talked about before on the channel. I think I've made maybe 2 videos about it in the past, but for me personally, my mindset and what I do around the holidays has changed, and obviously there's a ton of new people to the channel, so I figured I would bring this topic back and hopefully help some of you guys out to maybe alleviate some of the stress and just let you guys chill out a little bit more around the holidays. The first thing I want to bring up is, remember that the reason that most of us are losing weight, especially if it's a large amount of weight, it's to improve the quality of our life. And part of that is to enjoy our family and friends. And obviously, these things are finite. They don't happen all the time. The holidays don't come around. There's always going to be people in your life that might not be around for all of your holidays that you're going to be here on Earth for. So it's so incredibly important to enjoy your time with your friends and family and enjoy those moments that you have. So one of the first tips that I have is to be realistic with yourself. If you go into the holidays thinking, I'm not gonna eat any bad food, I'm gonna be completely good, I'm gonna stick on my diet, nothing's gonna go wrong, in reality, that's probably not going to happen. And then when you eventually do slip up a little bit, you feel like you failed. So it is incredibly important to go in with realistic expectations for yourself, because there is nothing wrong with enjoying Thanksgiving, enjoying Christmas, enjoying the holidays with your family. You should not feel shame about that. That is completely normal. It's completely normal to indulge a little bit on those holidays, but be realistic with the goals that you have. If you're gonna tell yourself, okay, I wanna go into Thanksgiving and come out not feeling completely sick to my stomach, that is a lot more realistic of a goal than saying, I'm just gonna go there with my meal prepped food that I already made and not eat any of the food, because you're just gonna be sitting there being bummed out that you're not enjoying that with your friends and your family. So be realistic with the goals that you set for yourself. So my second tip, I guess you could call it, would be to identify the days that you know you're probably gonna overeat, you know, have friends and family over, and you know that you're gonna indulge in food on those days. So make sure you say, okay, these are the days that I'm going to overindulge, and stick to those days, because it is really easy to, you know, when you have friends and family over, they're over for a week, you just kind of choose all the days and you indulge then. Which, again, if that's what you want to do, that's completely fine. But if you want to have a plan, stick to those days that you said, okay, these are the days that I'm going to eat as much as I want, or I'm going to enjoy myself as much as I want, and I'm not going to freak out. Because if you enjoy those days and then the next day you get right back on track, you're gonna be completely fine. There is not that much damage you're going to do in 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, as long as you stick to that plan. So pick out the days that you know, okay, I'm gonna eat more on these days and I'm gonna be completely fine with it, and stick to that. And then the third tip, so on those days that you know you're gonna be eating a little bit more, what I like to do is almost to employ some, it's kind of like an intermittent fast, right? So I know that at 5 or 6 o'clock, my family is gonna have a ton of food and I'm gonna enjoy that food. So during the first part of the day, I'm going to eat either a light, so I normally skip breakfast, so I'm not gonna eat breakfast, and that's pretty normal for me anyways. But for my lunch, that's normally a pretty big lunch, I'm just gonna keep it pretty light, obviously do a ton of nutrients, have stuff that's gonna keep me full, but that's not a ton of calories, because I know at 6 o'clock, I'm going to eat a lot of food, more calories than I normally would for a whole day probably, but I've planned for that, and I don't at all feel any shame in eating those 2 huge plates of food and all that pie. It doesn't feel bad to me, because I know that I had a plan and I stuck to that plan. And then tip number 4 is, the day after that day that you ate a lot with your friends and family, do not, and I'm serious about this, do not try and starve yourself or completely change the way you're eating and really barely eat anything that day. That is not a good idea. Go straight back to what you normally eat on a normal day. You are not gonna be helping yourself by completely cutting out calories the next day. It's not a good idea. It's just don't do it. So go back to eating how you normally would eat and just carry on with your life. And for the next tip, something that I like to do on these days is I try and load up probably about half of my plate with protein, so that's going to keep me fuller longer, it's gonna make me feel full, and then definitely have all of the fun stuff too. But if you're worried about that, load up on protein, load up on veggies and stuff like that, but then again, definitely have those really nice treats, because again, that's very important. So in a perfect world, obviously, it would be nice to be able to do all of this stuff and it work out perfectly. I know that for a lot of people, that's not going to happen and things aren't gonna go to plan and you're gonna end up eating more than maybe you wanted to. It is incredibly important not to dwell on mistakes that you have made. A lot of people like to view food as like a pass or fail, and I think that's not the right way to look at it, right? Like, we have so many opportunities to make decisions on the food that we eat. So if you sit there and dwell on the mistake that you made for one meal, or maybe it was a couple days, and you're bringing that mindset into the next day and the next day and the next week and the next month, that's when you end up completely falling off the wagon and just having to start at ground zero. Do not dwell on the mistakes that you've made, because that is not ever, ever, ever going to help you. It is never going to be a positive experience by dwelling on a mistake that you've made. You need to learn to move on and look at the next day as a new opportunity to make better decisions and better choices. Now, I do want to say the holidays are very difficult to navigate, and it's taken me years and years and years to find out things that work for me. So I just want to explain, because recently I actually had a Friendsgiving here at my house, and so we had, complete Thanksgiving meal, and I just want to share with you what I did and what worked for me, so hopefully it'll be able to help you out too. So what my day looked like was I woke up in the morning and went to the gym. I went to the gym because that's what I normally do. It wasn't because I felt like I needed to earn my food. I hate that ideology. So I went to the gym, and then I came home, and then I ended up doing some work at my house, and then at my first meal probably wasn't until about 2 p.m. Now, I'm not saying you have to do this, but for me that's pretty normal. It's not that out of the ordinary. And for that meal, I just had a salad with some bread. I went to Panera Bread. So I had a salad with chicken and stuff on it, and I had a piece of bread with it because their bread there is delicious. And then I came home, and then I was helping make the food for Friendsgiving. And then I also had one banana before the meal. And then for the meal, I had 2 huge plates of food, and this was about 7 o'clock that we had our meal, and that's actually a little bit earlier than I would normally have dinner. I normally eat dinner at about 9 p.m., but at 7, that's when we had our meal. I had 2 huge plates of food with chicken, ham, turkey. We had like really good sweet potatoes. It was anything you can think of, stuffing, all of the stuff that would normally be for Thanksgiving. And then I had 2 pieces of pumpkin pie. Didn't feel bad about it at all. And then I went to sleep, woke up the next day, and went back to my normal routine. And I can honestly say that this year, Thanksgiving and stuff, I feel like I've been able to handle it the best out of all of the years previous. Now, I want to make it very clear, that's what I did and what works for me. I am not saying that you need to not eat until 2 p.m. I'm not saying you need to eat as much as I did or as little as I did. You can do whatever you want, but that's what worked for me really well this year, and I think that that's probably going to be my plan throughout all of my next year's living. And the last thing that I want to bring up is that you have to take ownership if you do make a mistake. You cannot blame Thanksgiving for making you eat too much food, right? That is something that you did. And I'm not saying you need to shame yourself. I'm just saying you need to take the blame and take ownership of that, because once you do that, that's when you can make the better decisions. Because if you always say, if in your mind you tell yourself, when Thanksgiving comes around, I fall off my diet, that's just who I am, then you will never get through a holiday season feeling like you are confident enough to get through, diet through it or whatever, change your lifestyle through that season. You're gonna always feel like when the holidays come up, I'm going to gain 20 pounds. If you think like that, that's what's going to happen. So if you instead say, I'm making these mistakes, these decisions are mine, then you will have the ability to change your own decisions, because you can't change the holidays coming up. They're always gonna happen, right? But you can change the decisions that you make. So the reason that I bring this up is because for so many years in my life, I felt like I was a victim of my own circumstances, and I blamed everything else for why I was 360 pounds. I blamed everything else as to why, I wasn't able to lose weight, why through the holidays I would gain a ton of weight. It was everyone else's fault but myself. But once I started to take ownership and say, the choices I'm making are the reason that I am morbidly obese, that's when I was able to switch and think to myself, okay, if it's the choices I'm making, then all I need to do is make different choices. Now, obviously, easier said than done, But it was incredibly important for me to get out of that victim mentality and think to myself, I can control the future. I can control where I'll be in the future by just the decisions that I make. Now, I wasn't expecting to go so deep in this video, but I honestly do think that all of that stuff is connected. And if you really want to make a change during the holidays, it is completely possible and it's all up to you. So hopefully these tips helped you guys out. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. There was one other thing that I wanted to say. Oh yeah, look up if I am. Hey, thank you so much for watching the whole video and making it to this little weird end screen thing. I just wanted to let you know that my podcast is now completely up on any podcast service, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, anywhere you can think of, and it's on video on YouTube, so I'm gonna link that down in the description down below. I have really been enjoying making the podcast, and you guys have been absolutely just giving me some positive feedback, and it means a lot. So again, thank you so much. Check out the podcast. Peace out.
Obey the warning signs, and when there are flashing lights or wigwags, don't attempt to cross until they come to a complete stop.